6.6 is on the inverse trig functions. So you just have to know those. There's two of them that you for sure want to have memorized because they kind of seem to be the two that show up on the AP test, and the other four really don't seem to show up on the AP test. So let's try to get this going. So the two that you want to star here would be the two that we're going to use in the problems down here, the inverse sine and inverse tangent. Those would be the only two, if it was me, that I would spend the time to make sure I'd memorize there. Okay, so inverse sine has a square root, and it's 1 minus x squared in the bottom, and inverse tangent, there's no square root, and it's 1 plus x squared. All right, so those are the two pieces there. Sometimes you're going to see them like when we start doing antiderivatives, and you'll see this, and you'll try to take an antiderivative some really weird way, and then you're going to remember it was inverse sine or inverse tangent. That's more common, like where you'll see this more than taking derivatives. So it is important to just be able to recognize them, that this one's the sine one, and this one's the tangent one. So if you remember square root goes with sine, and the not square root goes with tangent, that'll help you. But let's try to take a derivative. So we're going to use the first one here, the inverse sine. Now if I have 1 over inverse sine, how can I go about taking derivative? Yep. So, yep, no, I know. So she's thinking, could I just do, if I do the reciprocal of this, would it be the same as the reciprocal of this? That's not going to come out the same. It's a good idea. It'd be really nice if it did. You can either do quotient rule if you want to, or you can move this to the numerator. Just be careful not to do some, bad math here. If I move this to the numerator, you don't just change the sign of this. It's not like it just turns into the sine of x when you move it up. Okay, this is this whole thing to the first. So when I move it to the numerator, that turns into the inverse sine to the negative first. And then we can take the derivative of that. I think it's a little easier this way. So now I have to use the chain rule. My outside function is this -1 piece, so pull the -1 down. Leave the inverse sine alone, and it's to the -2nd. And then multiply by the derivative of the inside, which is what's up there, 1 over square root of 1 minus x squared. So any questions on that? And then it's just a matter of maybe writing it together. So the -1 I would put in the numerator. And then the inverse sine I'd move back down to the denominator, and it's going to be to the what power? So over here, we had some technical difficulties, but our answer then would be y prime is that -1 over, and we would do the inverse sine squared when we moved it down. And then we have that square root piece in the denominator, 1 minus x squared. So that's how the answer would probably be written for something like that. So any questions on that one? Let's look at this one then. Hopefully you guys got a jump start on it while I was fixing stuff. Okay, derivative. I'll leave the x alone and I'll do the hard part first. Okay, so derivative of inverse tangent of something is 1 over 1 plus that something squared. Okay, so this is my inside function, and instead of inverse tangent of x, it's inverse tangent of this. So I'm going to put square root of x wherever I see an x there. So it turns into 1 over 1 plus the square root of x squared. So whatever's in that piece is what gets squared at the bottom there. So questions on that part of it? Okay, so that's the inverse tangent of square root of x, but then you have to realize this is my inner function, so I have to remember my chain rule. So I have to multiply by the derivative of that inside function. So derivative of the inside function will be 1/2 x to the negative a half, right? And it would be easy to mess something up there, so. And I'd like to think, oh, I'm like done and I can just clean it up. What am I missing still? Yeah, this was just leaving the first alone and the derivative of this. Now I want to leave the back alone and take the derivative of x, and derivative of x is 1. So I just have plus the inverse tangent of square root of x. So questions on that? Maybe you didn't do it right, but do we see how to do it now? Okay, now I will clean it up a little bit here. So I have an x in the numerator. I'll do a couple steps to clean this one up probably. And this will be a 2 in the denominator. This will be a square root of x in the denominator. And this will be 1 plus x. When I actually square that square root, it goes away there. Okay, and then I still have plus the inverse tangent in the back. Can I clean anything else up in this one? Can I clean this up just a little bit? What's that going to turn into? Square root of x, where at, on top or bottom? Top, right? Because this is x to the first, x to the half, you subtract those. So we just have square root of x over 2 times 1 plus x, and you could distribute the 2 if you wanted to. I usually just leave things factored. So questions on that one? Anyone get all the way through that one and get it right? You're close. That's it. Yeah, it's short, I know. So you guys can work on that homework